So it's a great pleasure to welcome you here in Madrid to the Medical College, and particularly to this famous hall, Ramon y Cajal Hall. So for some people, particularly for some of the younger people, that name perhaps does not mean very much. For those who studied physiology some years ago, that was a name that resonated throughout the course because he had a huge impact on physiology and medicine. So it's a great pleasure, particularly, to be in this hall. For the youngers who say, yeah, he's the old guy with the statue outside, who was he? Well, he did a great deal. And it's amazing how much he achieved. He was one of the really great scientists of the latter part of the 19th century and the early part of the 20th century. He did some tremendous work which led to the award of the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 1906. He was a histologist, but he was more than a histologist because he didn't just look at structure. He thought about how does this structure dictate function. And he was one of the first to take those observations and link them to mechanisms. How does this work? Not just this works, how does it work? And there's an important message there for all of us who study physiology. And he certainly left behind him a tremendous legacy that continues to influence thinking today. So when we think, what is this to do with the European Hydration Institute? And Jane Holdsworth will give us a bit more information later. The remit of the European Hydration Institute is to advance knowledge and understanding of all matters relating to human hydration and its effect on health, wellness, and performance. That's a very ambitious remit. And perhaps when we look at that remit, we might think of something that Ramon y Cajal said. He said, ideas are not enough. We must do something with them. So when we discuss some science this afternoon, we'll discuss ideas. But when we go away, we have to think, well, what did I learn today? And how does what I've learned today change how I think and change what I do? So it's not just ideas, it's putting those ideas into practice. And as I was thinking, what are we going to do this afternoon? I thought, well, our aim is to share our thoughts on the importance of hydration. So today, unlike Ramon y Cajal's day, when we think about issues, we don't go to the library, we go to the internet, and we go to Google. So when I go to Google and I say, tell me something about the importance of hydration, it throws up some academic papers at the top, but they'll be boring, so I don't want those. And then it throws up some websites. So I always skip the first website because it's always paid to be there, and I go to the second one. The second one's about the importance, understanding the importance of hydration. That's what I asked it. Understanding the importance of hydration. So where does it take me? It takes me to this website, Extreme Nutrition. But this is the reality of what people get when they go and look on the internet for information. So when you go and look for information on the importance of hydration, this is where it takes you. And I'll just blow that up a little bit because my eyesight's not what it was. And what it tells me, 75% of Americans are chronically dehydrated. And that immediately raises two thoughts. The first thought is, really? Can that be true? And the second thought is, who cares? Does it matter? And then it says, likely applies to half the world population. And that sets you thinking, doesn't it? Why is it 3/4 of Americans, but only half of the world population? What's odd about Americans that they're so much more at risk of dehydration than the rest of the world's population? And remember, this is what the average consumer gets when they go in search of information about the importance of dehydration. We're told lack of water is the #1 trigger of daytime fatigue. Really? Lack of water is the #1 trigger of daytime fatigue. And we're told that drinking 5 glasses of water daily is capable of slashing the risk of breast cancer by 79%. That seems remarkable and makes me want to learn more. But it also makes me a little bit suspicious. When I read down, it tells me more than I need to know, because it tells me that all types of soft drinks are very acidic, especially colas. In order to neutralize a glass of cola, it takes 32 glasses of high pH alkaline water. It's no wonder the consumer is confused when this is the information the consumer is provided with. About coffee, coffee has over 1,000 chemicals per cup of coffee, 500 of them known carcinogens. How many of you are regretting that cup of coffee you had outside? 500 known carcinogens. How are you still alive? And of course, coffee dehydrates you. Each cup of coffee contains 120 milligrams. Were that amount injected directly into your veins, you would physically die. Mentally you're okay, but physically you will die. So it is important we look at this information, because this is the information the consumer gets. And it's partly to address these concerns and these issues that there's a need for an organization like the European Hydration Institute to say, well, hang on, where can people get reliable information? And before that stage even, what do we mean by reliable information? What is fact and what is myth? What can we trust about what we think we know? Do we really know much about hydration? Or do we just perpetuate the things we read in textbooks, which were probably wrong when they were written and are almost certainly wrong today? So there's a lot of confusion, and that's why we're here, because we share an interest in hydration and we share a belief that understanding and educating in the area of nutrition is an important thing to do. So this is our second network meeting. It's a great pleasure to see some here who were there at the first network meeting, which we had in London at the beginning of June, at the Royal Society of Medicine in London. Not quite such a grand environment as this, but nonetheless a very prestigious institution in London. We had 6 research presentations by established scientists, and a key part of the meeting, we had 7 presentations by students who received research awards from the European Hydration Institute. In some cases, the research they presented was almost complete. In other cases, they had just finalized their methodologies and were presenting the proposal for the work they were going to do. So some very interesting presentations by young scientists. Today, we've got a fairly busy program over the next 4 hours. We've adopted a similar but different structure to the program. We have some presentations by established scientists at the beginning on review topics. And then after the break, we have a presentation from Jane Holdsworth about the European Hydration Institute. And then 3 of the supervisors of those research student projects will present the current state of the work that's been undertaken with the support of the European Hydration Institute. So we have a busy afternoon. Without more ado, I'm going to pass over to Professor Richard Gellert, who's joined us from Poland, who's going to talk about a medical perspective on hydration.